Bonjour, bonjour. Welcome to rainy Paris. You won't believe this, but it just started raining again. Welcome, friends, welcome. Good to see you. Could you give me a sound check and tell me if you can hear me? I hope you can. Perfect. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, we are in the 17th arrondissement today. And before we start strolling, I'm going to say a quick little hello. Just like that, I pulled my mask down for a few minutes. Great to see you. I told you you might see me with the red umbrella, and there it is, the star of the show. It's been pouring last night. It was pouring overnight, and then it stopped somewhat today. And of course, as luck would have it, can you hear it on the umbrella? It started about 5 minutes ago, but that's all right. My grandma used to say you're not made of sugar, and I am equipped to, to resist the rain. So we are going to take a stroll, and it was a bit of a surprise destination. And I am going to take you to a section of my neighborhood, the 17th arrondissement, that we haven't seen before, and that I guarantee you a lot of visitors never see, in fact. It's in the outskirts of the 17th arrondissement, very close to the périphérique, the beltway that goes around Paris. And the neighborhood is known as Les Épinettes. I'm going to show you how it's spelled in a second, okay? So I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see what I'm looking at. Sorry, the logistics is a bit complicated while holding the umbrella. You see those beautiful bay windows? These were super popular. In French, they're called oriels, and they are super popular. They were super popular in the 19th century. And this is when this neighborhood got a lot of work done. So that's why we are surrounded by some really nice buildings. I've already taken you through the 17th arrondissement on several strolls. So if you are new here, if you are new club members, this is a club member only stroll. You can hit the replay playlist on this YouTube channel, Friends with Vero, and go back to the strolls I've already shared in my neighborhood. There were a couple in the Plaine Monceau, the beautiful, elegant Plaine Monceau. And then there was one in the village, the former village of the Batignolles. And in fact, Les Épinettes, this neighborhood, Les Épinettes, is really linked to Les Batignolles in more ways than one, and we're going to talk about that today. I hope you enjoy the stories I have for you. Another thing we might want to mention, you see this street is called Rue Colette, and ignore the tags, this is Paris right now. Colette with 2 L's, so this has nothing to do with a French writer. This was in fact the last name of a gentleman who worked for one of the big railroad companies, the early ones in the 19th century. It was known as les chemins de fer de l'Ouest, the Western line, the first one, and it linked Paris to Saint-Germain-en-Laye. And this gentleman worked for that company, and he died a hero while protecting one of the passengers, and in 1893. So they named this street after him, and I'm pointing it out because the railroad is really linked to the story of Les Batignolles and Les Épinettes. So here you have it, le Square des Épinettes. This is the name I was telling you about. This is the name of this neighborhood, and if you want to picture it, it's a neighborhood that has the shape of a triangle that is stuck between 2 large avenues, Avenue de Saint-Ouen, Avenue de Clichy, and right next to the Batignolles, in fact. And you can see this beautiful little square. Most people never see it. It's really out of the way, and I want to take you through it today. I also want to take you through the rest of this neighborhood and tell you stories along the way. Let me pull up my face mask because I don't want to get in trouble. I hope. There we go. Okay, so why the name Les Épinettes? Les Épinettes, there are different theories, but one of them is that Les Épinettes was a wine varietal. We've talked about Paris having a lot of vineyards and making a lot of wine since the Middle Ages. And there was a wine varietal known as Les Épinettes, which made white wine. It would be similar to a Pinot Blanc. And so they think that's where the name of this neighborhood came from. All right, fogging up like mad, taking off glasses, nothing new so far. Here we go. You are entering a Parisian square, public garden. Pardon the camera moves, it's going to be tricky. This is a lovely park that I discovered a few months after I moved in here. I've been here for about 6 months now. There are only 2 statues in this park, and this is one of them. I'm going to talk about this lovely lady in a second, but it's a typical Parisian square or neighborhood garden. You see children playing, you see people strolling, you hear the police as well. And my favorite section of this square or public garden is this alleyway over here, and I'm going to take you so we can stroll through it together because it's a lovely place even in the rain. So we are again at the Square des Épinettes in Les Épinettes, which is a part of the 17th arrondissement. Welcome if you just joined us. This is a club member only event. Welcome to all our new club members. Welcome to all of you who've been by my side for a year now and longer in many cases. I hope you enjoy this stroll today in the 17th arrondissement. So let's talk for a second about this lady. Her name was Maria Deraismes. You may or may not have heard her name before, but you can see that this statue is a tribute to her. And when we look at her, she looks very self-assured. Maria Deraismes was a very influential woman in Paris in the 19th century. She was a feminist. She came from a pretty well-heeled family, actually. But early on, she wanted to be a painter at first, but then she decided to become a writer. And she was a very good public speaker, very passionate one. And all her life, she fought for the rights of women. She wanted equality between men and women. And she wanted to protect the rights of women, the rights of children. She wanted women to be able to vote. I don't know if you know this, but men in France were allowed to vote in 1848, but women had to wait till 1944 when General de Gaulle gave them the right to vote. As it turns out, this is a great idea for me to stand here because it's really dumping. And those beautiful marronniers or chestnut trees are somewhat protecting me right now and protecting the camera. So this is good. I'm glad I'm here. I dread the moment I'm going to have to step out of it. But just so you know, I am prepared. I'm going to use Maria's statue here. I'm wearing my rubber boots, my Méduse rubber boots, and a very sturdy rain jacket. So I'm going to be okay. Bonjour all if you just joined. So we just saw one of the ladies, one of the 2 statues, the lady who's represented here. And then the Square des Épinettes was opened in 1893, during the Belle Époque, at the very end of the 19th century. We're going to stroll now in my favorite section, which is this beautiful alleyway lined with chestnut trees or marronniers. And on the side, we have some pretty great buildings. Yeah, I thought you would enjoy this stroll even with the weather. I knew Belleville would not be a good idea today because of the views from the park, so I decided to bring you here instead. This is a lovely neighborhood many people never see, so you get treated to a special visit. So, remember our visit in Les Batignolles, the nearby village of Les Batignolles, one of many villages I've taken you to over the last few months around Paris. All these formerly independent villages that were incorporated into Paris and turned into arrondissement by Napoleon III in 1860. Les Batignolles had started developing before that, in fact, in the early 19th century. And Les Épinettes was a hamlet, a small little hamlet that was eventually attached to Les Batignolles. Look at this building, look at this thing. This is very early 20th century. A lot of what we'll see around here is late 19th, early 20th, which is La Belle Époque. You see the use of the brick and the limestone at the same time. Welcome if you just joined. We are in the 17th arrondissement in Les Épinettes, a section we hadn't explored yet. That is right next to Les Batignolles. So today I'm going to take you back in time to the Belle Époque, to what was essentially once Paris became industrialized, a working class neighborhood. We've gone through quite a few lately. And eventually they decided to give this corner of the 17th arrondissement a real neighborhood feel. So they gave them a beautiful square. And all the square in Paris, a lot of them have kiosks like this, music kiosks, where bands used to play. And this helps, you know, bring, of course, the community, the neighborhood together. There are about 30 of them in Paris in different parks, and this is one of them. It's a lovely place. We'll go back to it in a second. It's raining, it's boring. Wasn't that a song? I think it was Barbra Streisand. Look at this oriel or bow window on this building. So again, a lot of these beautiful buildings, clearly built for the bourgeoisie, date back to the late 19th or very early 20th century. The square or garden itself is 1893. We are going to talk about the people who helped grow this neighborhood. And you might be surprised to hear that they were in fact industrialists and bankers. But where the story varies a little bit is that these guys, a lot of them, and we're going to highlight a couple, were actually very good to their employees, to the factory workers who lived around here and in Les Batignolles. They had reasons to do this, but a lot of them were philanthropists. And I think I should highlight a couple of them, because this was a very important time in Parisian life and in French life. The industrialization of Paris, the railroad that started spreading, the big building you see through the trees, which are really beautiful. I hope you enjoy this stroll, and you're enjoying the stroll and agree with me that this alleyway lined with chestnut trees or marronniers is really beautiful. This is my favorite part of the park when I come here. I'm sure it's lovely on a hot day in the summer. So this building in the back, the brick building, is in fact a lycée, a high school. You know, les lycées were created by Napoleon I, one of many institutions he created in France. And this has been here for a long time, since the late 19th century as well. It's a massive building. It goes around the block. And it's more of a vocational school than anything else, which totally makes sense for the neighborhood, since we are in a neighborhood, and this is very different from other sections of the 17th arrondissement I've shown you before. This is still pretty much a working class neighborhood, in fact a multi-ethnic neighborhood, and you might see as we stroll around, we have immigrants still in this neighborhood. So this is a quartier populaire. The French say populaire in the sense of working class. Very different from La Plaine Monceau, where I took you, remember, where Sarah Bernard used to live, Sarah Bernhardt. Let's stroll a little, then I'll speed up. Because what's nicer than to stroll in a beautiful park like this? Last week I took you on an exclusive stroll, club members only. I took you through a very different type of garden near Charonne in the 20th arrondissement, le Jardin Naturel, the natural garden. This is more of a traditional park here, a square. At the same time, it was built way after the Second Empire, Napoleon III, so I kind of like the vibe here. It's not overdone. You know, they didn't do grottos and waterfalls. Very different from le Square des Batignolles, which anchors the Batignolles. Look at this lovely kiosk. Isn't that nice? People seeking shelter from the rain. I know they've had concerts here in the summer. The city of Paris, before COVID hit, was trying to revitalize the life of neighborhoods like this one by encouraging them and giving some funds. So a lot of these kiosks could be used again for community events. Now, I wouldn't be able to stroll on the grass normally, and you can see it's in bad shape. It should have been resting all winter, but because currently Parisians have no restaurants, no cafes, they tend to come out and eat outside at lunchtime, so the grass is clearly showing the strain right now. Here's the second statue of the park. I showed you Maria Deraismes, the feminist author, who is very influential in the 19th century in Paris. And here is Jean-Leclaire, the gentleman pictured here. And this is part of the history of the neighborhood. So what you see on this statue is a gentleman who happened to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, a self-made man who had started as a worker himself. He was a construction painter. Eventually, he started his own business, became extremely successful in the early 19th century. But where Jean-Leclaire was different from other business owners at the time, you can see here the tribute says, "À Jean-Leclaire, ses ouvriers." So this is from his workers, this tribute. And the gentleman you see at his feet is one of his workers. And because they were painters, you see the tools of the trade at his feet. I think there's a sponge and a brush. And Jean-Leclaire is kind of saying thank you and hugging him. Not all bosses, industrialists or bankers were like that at the time, which is why this guy deserves a tribute here. There is a long dedication here that basically tells you Jean-Leclaire did a lot of good things for the people who worked for him, having come himself from the working class. The first thing he did in 1826 was to switch the chemicals in the paints that his workers used because they were bad for their health. So he ensured that they would be safe. In 1838, he created a almost like a health insurance for them, protecting them. But his greatest accomplishment was that in 1842, he was the first, if not one of the first, business owners, entrepreneurs in Paris who offered some of his workers to share profits in the company. So the statue was erected, the first statue was erected, just like for Maria Deraismes over there. And unfortunately, during World War II, as you probably know, the Vichy government passed a law that enabled the Germans to melt down a lot of statues that were made of bronze and monuments, and they needed a metal. And so these statues were taken down, this one and the one of Maria Deraismes I showed you at the entrance of the square earlier, and they were replaced later in the 70s and 1980s as well. So already we've been here for 15-20 minutes, and I've already told you this was after being a very pastoral land, vineyards growing, a little village in the countryside. It grew after the mid-19th century. Workshops, fabriques, factories, set up shop here, and a lot of things happened even from a social perspective. So let's leave the square because I have more things to show you. We are going to see now how blue-collar workers lived in this area, because some of the housing has been preserved. I'm getting stares. They're not used to seeing live streamers in this section of Paris, I can tell. Thank you for joining me today. If you just arrived, we are in the 17th arrondissement, kind of on the outskirts of the arrondissement, very close to the périphérique. Very, very close to the périphérique, the beltway that goes around Paris. Here is this massive school I told you about, the high school. Over there it has, of course, the French motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, the coat of arms of the city of Paris. And you can see the use of the brick, which is always a sign of former working class neighborhoods, because brick is cheaper. Let's cross. So we are in a street that is named after Jean Deraismes, the gentleman pictured, or featured, I should say, on the statue I just showed you. He also has his own street. Welcome to our new club members. I know quite a few of you have joined this month in April. and I hope you're happy to be here. I have more events lined up to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of this very special club that counts over 600 members as of today. We're not going to run across, we're going to wait. Oh, this is so cool. I can actually step in puddles with these shoes. There's rubber shoes and they don't get wet. Thank you, June. All right, so nothing remarkable about this square, this other garden, but you can see his name, Jean-Leclaire, the gentleman on the statue who took really good care of his workers. Let's see. So this was not unusual as we stroll around this park, just to get to the other side. This was not unusual at the time. A lot of business owners, industrialists, we'll talk about another one soon, were Catholics, staunch Catholics. And they were really concerned that in the late 19th century, socialism and anarchist ideas spread in France. And so they had to do something to ensure that the people who worked for them wouldn't become socialists or anarchists. So what they did is they created services, they created organizations, they called them Cités, to help them, to provide housing, to provide healthcare. And by this, they hoped to bring them back to the church at the same time. Les Épinettes has a really cool church that was built in the first decade of the 20th century. I will mention it as we get closer. So Jean-Leclaire was one of these men, those entrepreneurs. He was special because he himself had come from the working class. Not all of them did, but they were philanthropists, and quite a few of them set up shop here in this neighborhood. Beautiful light as the sun breaks through the clouds. So we have this little area for kids here in this square, this garden. Look at that. Well, it was churches helping communities, but it was also churches hoping to recruit those communities so they wouldn't go to extremist political parties, which I'm sure at the time the socialists were considered extremists, just like the anarchists. And these businessmen like Jean-Leclaire and the other one we'll talk about had the money, the means to make things happen and to create services for these people around here. So you can see these buildings. When you look at this, you know right away that you're not in an elegant neighborhood in Paris. A lot of them are social housing. So this neighborhood, in spite of some nicer buildings here, so this neighborhood really remains pretty much a working class neighborhood. I don't know if you're aware of that, but in Paris we have a lot of small streets in former working class neighborhoods. Sometimes they're dead-end streets. Usually they're small streets lined with very modest, humble houses, and they are known as les Cités, C-I-T-E. Sometimes they are known as les villas, though les villas tend to be a little bit more elegant. I cannot zoom because I'm holding my umbrella with my left hand, but do you see the Eiffel Tower? Look at Miss Eiffel in the back over there. Do you see her? This is great. Sorry, both my hands are full. So here we have une villa, which is called villa. It could be called a Cité, des Épinettes, which is the name of the neighborhood. And like I said, it's lined with homes, apartments. Facades are made of brick a lot to reflect the humble roots of the neighborhood. And you find that a lot in the outskirts of Paris. All these arrondissements where I've been taking you, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, and going down through the 11th, the 10th, as well as on the left bank. So a villa is a little bit more elegant, yes, than a cité. Look at this building, look at the facade. The use of the brick in different colors. And you can see this is early 20th century because you have a lot of the ceramic work as well. This was a big thing at the time. If you are enjoying this video, don't hesitate to give me a like and to subscribe as well, because it really helps with YouTube. Thank you. Wind's picking up. So we are going through a villa, but I'm going to take you through a cité. Actually, I cannot take you through the cité because a lot of them are protected now by gates and digicodes. Why? Because it's not factory workers living there anymore. It's people who can afford real estate and are craving small houses with gardens sometimes or patios. And Parisians are big on that, as you know, especially this year. So this is a very old one as well. This one is called La Cité Joyeux, which roughly could translate the happy cité. And I'm not going to be able to go through, but I want you to see. Can you see the patios in the back? And you can see the little alleyway if I do this. And it's lined with houses and very humble homes for sure. Now, I looked at prices, at real estate prices in this neighborhood, which, as I mentioned, is not one of the most elegant sections of the 17th arrondissement. Apartments around here go for 10,000 euros per square meter, which, if you compute it in dollars, is about $1,000 per square foot. So I'll let you figure it out. This is a lot of money, and you wouldn't even be in a very centrally located arrondissement or section of that arrondissement. Old building here that has been turned into a clinic, but those two plaques are telling us, it's a shame I cannot zoom. I'll get closer. Those two plaques are telling us that a long time ago, this was la Société pour le développement de l'apprentissage dans les métiers du bâtiment. That's the one on the left. And it basically said that this was an organization to train apprentices in all the jobs related, the careers related to the construction business. And you can see a date on the one on the right, which is 1905, and this totally matches the architectural style. The colors they chose and the brick. So a lot was done in this neighborhood, as I've mentioned too, for workers. On the right-hand side is a place, we have a lot of social housing, and this place here is, those are rental apartments for seniors. And as I strolled by the other day, I saw that they had activities for seniors. It's not a retirement home. It's housing for low-income families and seniors. Isn't this lovely? The rain is slowing down, I think. I'll be darned. Again, maybe we'll get a little lucky after all. I'm just hoping I don't miss anything since I'm not wearing my glasses. You can see the tip of Miss Eiffel over there. Do you see her between those two buildings in the distance on the left? I am on the famous, well, not so famous, but Rue des Épinettes, the street that is named after the neighborhood. And we are going to turn now into one of these passages, the passage Pouchet. You see the cafe is closed, the local cafe. Now the passage, great word, passage. A lot of visitors go see the covered passages in downtown Paris, like the elegant Galerie Vivienne, all of these passages that were really created for entertainment and shopping in the 19th century. This is a very different type of passage. This is a passage where people live, passage meaning passageway. So it could be a dead end. In fact, this one is, because across that street over there is a gate where it stops, where it ends. But the reason I'm here is because I want to show you the kind of housing that blue-collar workers or factory workers had in the 19th century. And there happens to be a pretty magical place on the right-hand side here, which is a private street, so I'll be whispering I don't want to disturb people. You see the name? It's called Impasse de Ligny. So Impasse means dead end street, or cul-de-sac, as some of my friends like to say. Look at that. So this is a private street lined with a type of low houses. Do you see on the left here? This is the type of houses you would have seen in all these villages around Paris during the Belle Époque and even before that. But this one is well known in the area because it's végétalisé. Végétalisé is a big new trend in Paris and in France. Vegetalization, I guess. The greening of Paris and France. They do that on facades, they do that on rooftops. And the people who live here have basically created the gardens they don't have for most of them. I was here a few weeks ago as they were planting some of these containers. I see social housing at the end over there. That big building looks like social housing. So you see how peaceful it is here? So if you can afford to pay about $1,000 per square foot to live here, you could land one of these little houses and feel like you're really far away from Paris. But in fact, you're right. I mean, you're very close to Metro Line 13, a stop like Guy-Moquet, M-O-Q-U-E-T. You have a couple of big ones on the right-hand side. My favorite is this blue one. I'll turn around so you can see it. This is a big one here. Isn't this beautiful? The big one is at the end on the right-hand side. It's like a double house. And I'm not sure it belongs to the same person, but it's massive. Let's see if I can turn around to give you a better view of the street this way. There you go. And this is my favorite one, the turquoise color on the left. I like that they have what looks like a sunroom, which, let's face it, in Paris, where the skies look a lot like, well, what they look like today, would come in handy. But notice everything is private. There are cameras, there are gates, and that's very French, of course, but especially if you live in this type of neighborhood where you don't want people to bother you. So we're lucky there's no gate and digicode. So again, this is called l'Impasse de Ligny. And a lot of these streets, like this one, the one before that, were named after the guys who, owned the land, and speculators, if you will, or landowners who split it up in small sections and sold them. Look at the pretty flowers. Isn't this? This is nice. A privileged few can live here, with gentrification, of course, but remember, these were built for factory workers, and I'm sure they didn't have quite as many pots and containers then, but this is where they lived. All right, let's keep going. So I'm not going to follow the passage Pouchet, where we were here, to the end, because the end is this green gate over there, so you've seen the best part of it pretty much. And now we are on la rue Pouchet. So we left the passage Pouchet, we are on la rue Pouchet. Pouchet was also a landowner, but I think he lived before the 19th century. I think he lived in the 18th century. I'm going to try and do something here. I may luck out or not, we'll see. Looks like the rain kind of stopped. Let's see. Maybe I'll luck out. I did not luck out. The gate was open, it just closed. That's all right. You will see it from outside and you'll see very well. Now, I told you I would talk about another gentleman who took really good care of his workers. This whole neighborhood, Les Épinettes, grew thanks to a gentleman named Monsieur Gouin, Gouin. He was from Tours in the Loire Valley, and Tours is where he's buried, in fact. He was from a long line of bankers, and he came here and invested in the railroads and took really good care of his employees. He's the one who helped finance the church, the local church. He's the one who helped finance other things. Believe it or not, my friends, but what you're looking at, this first section here, followed by a second one, and then a third over there, is what Monsieur Gouin built for his employees. And at the time, that was pretty incredible. That was pretty revolutionary. You can see it's made fairly affordably with brick. But look at the detail. On the first floor, they had public wash houses and public showers, so people in the neighborhood could use those. And then in each apartment, there would be a trash chute, which at the time was considered a big perk. And today, I'm sure these those apartments are pretty expensive, and you see how they gated the entrance. I've been able to go in several times because the gate was open. So if you come back, you could try and sneak in. There's a beautiful little garden in the middle, which you kind of see if I do this. In fact, here is one of these ugly new benches. You know, I shared information about the new Paris benches that the city of Paris is trying to... So some of them look a bit like this, all wood, and they're supposed to be landscaped, kind of. Let's see if I can climb on this thing. I hope it's sturdy. It is. Okay, good. Look at that. I don't know if you can still see, if you see the garden or not, but I'm trying to show it to you. So Monsieur Gouin, big banker, big industrialist. He built steam engines. There was a factory nearby that belonged to him. He built all the equipment that the railroads needed, the tracks, the bridges, the metal bridges and all that. And he left a big mark. He made a big mark on this neighborhood. What we are looking at in this jardin, which is fairly new, Jardin Paul Didier, a brave man who actually resisted the Pétain government during the war, a magistrate. This garden has been created on what used to be La Petite Ceinture. La Petite Ceinture was a railroad line, one of the popular ones that used to go all the way around Paris, the original beltway, because ceinture means belt, right? And of course it stopped operating. Passenger traffic stopped in the 30s, and then merchandise stopped later. But there are sections of Paris now where you can go, this is one of them, and you can enjoy La Petite Ceinture. You can stroll along it if they'll allow you to. You can do that in the 13th. You can do that in the 14th as well. There are different sections where you can do that. But again, one last peek at Monsieur Gouin's incredible complex that he built for his workers. Since there's a delay in the comments, I can now barely see your comments. I can finally see your comments about the bench. And they're not good. Ah, look, sunbreak. Woohoo. Yeah, you could see the new courthouse. That's right, Maria. I didn't point it out in the distance because I can't zoom with my left hand holding the umbrella, the soaking wet umbrella. So I have saved a very special place for last, and we are headed there now. In fact, we are leaving Les Épinettes behind us. We're still in it, and we are headed towards Les Batignolles. So we are really very close to the border between Les Épinettes and Les Batignolles, which, remember, were part of the same village. Yeah, the new courthouse is a very interesting building to see. It's hard to get into it right now, but when you realize it was the same building that was on the Île de la Cité for years and years in Paris, totally different type of environment for the people who work there. I wonder how they reacted when they moved to this area in this big glass building. Talk about, that's a big change for them. We're lucky the rain stopped, aren't we? So somebody said that for the benches, neighborhoods have to approve them, and there are different types that are being installed, and neighborhood associations have to approve, to vote for them or to say they agree. So I'm sure that here in the 17th, some people must have approved that bench we just saw. We are still on Rue Pouchet, Pouchet, and I'm going to take a left here to show you a very special part of this neighborhood. Over here on the left is the church that they eventually built in the first decade of the 20th century to bring all these factory workers back to the church. And the church was financed, not surprisingly, by some of those business owners. I'm going by the local boulangerie. It happens to have some really pretty decor here that looks really old. You know, some of these boulangeries still have those, and they protect them with a piece of glass. And this is called the Fournil, le Fournil des Épinettes. I will show you the name. I tried it, it's a decent boulangerie, nothing to shout about, but le Fournil des Épinettes. Fournil is the word for, in a boulangerie, it's the room where the baker makes the bread, and the room usually where the oven is. Okay. See, so those impasse, those dead-end streets are everywhere. And it really pays in those old working-class neighborhoods to really look left and right. Sometimes they're not worth a visit, and sometimes they are. So you always keep your, turn your head left and right because you'll keep seeing new ones. They're everywhere. You're welcome, Janet. I'm a French teacher. So we have now reached one of the most beautiful cités. We talked about those cités and those villas built in the 19th century. And this is one of the most famous ones, at least in the 17th arrondissement. We are Rue de la Jonquière, one of the oldest streets in this neighborhood. It's been changed a lot, it got cut off in sections, a lot happened to that poor street. But it's one of the two entrances of La Cité des Fleurs. And so when you come into those cités, remember that they are private. They can decide to close them at any time. And at night they are closed and locked up. And it's advised to be a little quiet when you come in here because people live here and they will kick you out if, I've seen people kicked out of those before. So La Cité des Fleurs, very well-known one in Paris and a lovely one. You'll have a much better view from the other side since they decided to do construction here in the middle. Now, this one, the Cité, was built in the 1840s. And it was two, actually, investors who bought land here and subdivided it and started selling the lots. It took about 20 years for them to sell all of the lots. Interestingly, before the end of the 19th century, it was kind of a mixed usage place because you had bourgeois who moved here, engineers who worked for Monsieur Gouin on the railroad line, but you also had some workers. In fact, Monsieur Gouin bought a place here, one of the lots, and housed some of his employees here. So you had a kind of a mix socially. And then, of course, towards the start of the 20th century, things changed a little because it had to be connected to the sewers. That was an expensive thing to do. And so a lot of the factory workers moved out at that point. I'll let you imagine today how much it costs to live here. Listen to the bells. And the birds. It feels like we're in a village, doesn't it? And in fact, this is the back of the church I just mentioned, Saint-Joseph des Epinettes, the local church built in the first decade of the 20th century. You can access it from this street. This building belongs to them, as well as other buildings on the street. And it could be a village because here is the school, another local school. Here's la maternelle, which is kindergarten. You can see the building of the school here. If you come during the week, you can hear the kids play during recess, la récréation, récré. One thing that was cool about la Cité des Fleurs from the start is that as soon as they subdivided it and started selling the lots here, they had pretty strict covenants from the start. So even though they let people decide what style they wanted to build in, they still put some limits on the height of the walls. See those Medici type vases right here? These were kind of a style that they made mandatory here. The height of the wall was also regulated, the height of the buildings, the gates. So unlike other cités in Paris, it kind of kept I'd say something quite uniform. This is a big building you see here. It says crèche on the wall, which means daycare. It belongs to the French Red Cross, and this is where they train some of their staff, and they also have a crèche here, which is a daycare. And in fact, it used to be a clinic a long time ago, and a famous French actress and her sister were born here in this clinic. Her name is Catherine Deneuve. Her talented and beautiful sister was Françoise d'Orléac. You probably don't know her because Françoise d'Orléac died in a terrible car crash and she was very young. Catherine was the youngest sister at the time. So they were born in this street. So we're going to see some pretty nice houses. See, the public is allowed even on Saturdays. But no cars, no dogs as far as I know are allowed either. I saw a few cats. And so this is the fin du fin, or the crème de la crème, because when you live here at la Cité des Fleurs, not only do you get the privacy, well, somewhat, and the village feel, but you also get the gardens. You can see that they all have gardens outside. So this is double whammy. These are the lucky ones. Not like the little Impasse we saw earlier where they had to use containers to create gardens. The lucky people here do have gardens. You know who lived here for a while was the painter Sisley. And let's see, now that I'm not holding my umbrella, I should be able to pull out something I meant to show you. Alfred Sisley in 1869 lived on the street and he painted this painting, which is very interesting because it was called Looking at Montmartre from la Cité des Fleurs. So it's very interesting on many levels because you realize that in 1869, when it was painted, even though industrialization had started, la Cité des Fleurs was nothing much. I mean, it was really the countryside still. You see how young the trees were? And look at Montmartre in the back. Montmartre was not covered with buildings, the hill, the way it is today. So this shows us that this urbanization of all these villages around Paris was very progressive, and that it really didn't happen until the very late 19th century, the Belle Époque, because this was 1869. I just checked the date. I thought you'd be interested in seeing that. Trying to show you a few facades. So we have a concierge here, une gardienne as they call them today. They don't say concierge anymore, they say gardienne. And things are pretty strict. She sits at the entrance, she has her loge, her office at the entrance, and she or he, it could be either, they keep a close eye on things. They don't let people mess around. Look at this one. How about that? don't know what the bells are for. What time is it now? It's not, it's about 6. Close to. Look at the yellow walled one here. Is that pretty? But you know, in the tradition of French life, right? Pour vivre heureux, vivons cachés. To live happily, let's live in hiding. Let's not show off our money, our wealth, because we all know what happened to those who did before and during the French Revolution, don't we? One of these is in the Renaissance style. It's pretty well known. I think it's number 29. I read something about it, so it's got to be this one. And the one next to it isn't that bad either. Yeah, Métro Brochon, I see you asking about the metro. Métro Brochon is close by. Where we started, the closest metro was Moquet, Guy Moquet, M-O-Q-U-E-T, but it's the same metro line. Until they opened the new stations on line 14 very recently this year, I've taken you on a tour down there. There's only one metro line here, which is 13, and it really isn't the best in Paris. So it often feels like the 17th is a little bit out of the way. This house has an interesting story, this one. During the German occupation, there was a network belonging to the Resistance that had originated in Lyon. You may remember Lyon has been called the capital of the French Resistance. Jean Moulin was based in Lyon, the famous French resistant and hero. And they tell you that in this house, on May 18th, 1944, the people from that network, I mean, realize it's just 1 month, not even before, about a month before D-Day. They were all arrested by the Gestapo. Probably, somebody probably told on them. And they shot on sight Colette, who was the lady at the head of that network. And the others died they were sent to camps and died during deportation. So a thought for them. Look at this beautiful railing. The rain has completely stopped. This is wonderful. I wasn't hoping to be so lucky. A lot of these are apartments now. Some could be single family homes. They are small enough, but I would think that some of them are apartments. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know anybody who lives here, so I cannot ask. Like one like this, for example, I can't imagine it belongs to just one family. Though, you never know. You never know. And there are plaques along the street that tell you that some artists lived around here. Here was a painter named Simon Antaille, who lived here until 1966, in fact. And earlier there was a couple, they were painters too, who lived here. Remember we talked about the artists who lived in the Batignolles? The early Impressionists, they were nearby, very close to here. And we are reaching the end of La Cité des Fleurs. You can see it's more like apartment buildings or buildings towards the end, higher buildings. So you don't get that same feel at the end of it, or at the start, depending on where you stand. Let's see, if I do this, too bad for those 2 cars parked. But usually you get a pretty nice view like this. So this is the story of Les Épinettes, this section of the 17th arrondissement that is still pretty much working class and multi-ethnic. Not here in La Cité des Fleurs, but the sections we saw before. And I hope you enjoyed the stories of the business owners, the entrepreneurs who made things happen around here and helped create the infrastructure that a lot of these factory workers needed to live. At the end of the 19th century, during the Belle Époque, in France and all over Europe, I think there was an awareness among industrialists, business owners, that epidemics they were trying to curb, you know, terrible epidemics, cholera and others, infectious diseases, were created by unsanitary housing, by living conditions, because a lot of workers, you know, just lived in terrible buildings. And so a lot of these men, some of these men who were philanthropists and had reasons, we explained earlier, started creating those cités and those places where workers could live or could lead a bit maybe healthier lives, I guess. See the gate? So at night it's closed, it's locked, you can't go in. And this takes us back to a very busy street, one of the two that Les Épinettes actually stands between. This is the Avenue de Clichy. And Clichy, of course, is a reminder of another village that was around here, another commune, independent commune. And it's a very busy street. It takes you back to Les Batignolles, it takes you back to other areas. So I'll say a quick hello. If you have any questions, let me know. Now is a good time. Oh, there's a lot to see in the 17th. And I've covered a lot of ground. There might be an extra walk I might want to do, another section, but I feel good that we've covered a lot of the history of the neighborhood now. And it gives you, if you go back to those strolls, if you miss them. There we go. Face mask hanging like an earring, cool earring, with the Cité des Fleurs behind me. So I want to say thank you. It's been almost an hour. Thank you for spending your Saturday, part of your Saturday with me today. I hope to see some of you tomorrow on Zoom for conversations with Vero. We're going to discuss your favorite travel destinations in France. You have received the email with the link, and if you can't find it, just let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. But thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a great weekend. And as always, if you miss the live stream, this one or tomorrow's, then I will be sharing them in emails anyway. Thanks a lot for your support. Welcome if you're new. And we'll be chatting soon, I'm sure. À bientôt.